What is up, everybody? Welcome to The Stack. I'm Alex.
I'm Justin.
And on The Stack, we talk about a ludicrous amount of books that have come out this week.
A shocking amount. We're down one host. We're up 10 comic books. That's the value of Pete.
Oh my gosh, he's not going to like to hear that. But why don't we jump into the books, because we do have so many to talk through this week. Kicking it off with DC versus Vampires, All Out War, #1 from DC Comics, written by Alex Paknadel and Matthew Rosenberg, a.k.a. Bergie, as I like to call him.
Bergie!
Art by Pasquale Qualano. This is continuing the DC versus Vampire saga. Vampires have taken over the DC universe. Here we're focusing on some survivors who are trying to bring back Batman, courtesy of a Lazarus pit. As you might expect, it goes horribly wrong. But Justin, I know you've been a huge fan of everything that's been going on in this world. What'd you think of this?
I do love this book, and I don't know how the humans keep losing. It's just a nonstop L for all of the, and also it's like, you're risking it all to bring back Batman. I know he's good, but is he that good?
He's pretty good. I mean, I've only seen a couple of Batman movies and animated shows and read a couple of Batman comics over the course of the past, 40 plus years, something like that. But he's usually able to get out of a scrape.
Yeah, but this is bad. Like, you know how sometimes right when you wake up, you're bad at stuff? Mm-hmm. Like when you wake up in the morning? This is Batman being woken up from the dead. So it's he's going to
grumpy.
have grumpy, exactly.
Yeah.
And a grumpy Batman's not a Batman you want solving big problems.
And I don't know what's going on with Alfred right now. He's not going to be able to bring him some bouillabaisse or something like that to make him feel better. So
yeah, the famous dish that he always had after a night of crime fighting was a hot seafood soup. Alfred, where's my bouillabaisse?
I really like this book. I am bummed that Pete isn't here, because this feels like right in his wheelhouse. You got Deathstroke, you got Booster Gold, you got all these Captain Atom, these very extreme characters all fighting together. It's black and white and red in terms of the coloring. So
that's a full rainbow. That's Pete's rainbow, as we call it.
Exactly. But very cool book. And like you're talking about, they keep amping up the danger in such a big way.
And the fact that this is a spoiler, but I won't say it. The character that is the sort of ultimate villain is such a great, surprising choice, and I like that. I also want to shout out the backup story. There's this great Batgirl vampire, Commissioner Gordon vampire story, and it's awesome. Really well drawn. I love the art in this, in the backup.
Good stuff. Next up, Shang-Chi and the Ten Rings, #1 from Marvel, written by Gene Luen Yang, art by Marcus To. If you haven't been reading the regular Shang-Chi series from Gene Luen Yang, that is okay. You can jump in right here with this new one. Basically, all you need to know is that Shang-Chi has the Ten Rings, just like he does in the movie, except they have a corrupting influence on him, or at least that's what he's scared about. And basically, every villain organization in the Marvel Universe wants these weapons for their own. I love Gene Luen Yang's tone on these books. It's light, it's funny, the action is good, he dives into the characters, he vacillates between domestic scenes and big action scenes with equal aplomb. Just a very fun book.
It feels like there's a classic comic structure to it in a good way, where you get to see the hero being a hero and the hero being a human. And I love that. I feel like that's a very Marvel method way of doing things. And the other thing I love about this book is the Ten Rings aren't just like the Iron Man suit, where it's just like, let me get it going and win. The Ten Rings are a danger in themselves. So Shang-Chi's just fighting both the villains and also his own sort of power set in a cool way.
And let me throw something out at you. I don't know if they're going to do this, but it feels like we're already getting some bubblings of the Punisher is running the hand. And clearly that's going to bring him face to face with Daredevil, who is running the fist, I believe, with Elektra or something like that. Yeah. And with Shang-Chi running the 5 weapons, and all of them having these weird corrupting influences. Again, I don't know if Shang-Chi is necessarily going to be brought into this, but I feel like there's this exciting, potentially exciting, very different sort of event that Marvel could be leading towards, where you have all of these villain organizations being led by heroes all going to war with each other.
There's a lot of international crime syndicate CEO changeover happening here at once. And
we've had a lot of world-threatening stakes, universe-threatening stakes, heroes fighting each other type things. And I know this is a variation on it, but having like a real all-out war with the criminal organizations of the Marvel Universe, I think that would be a lot of fun. I'd be into reading that.
Yeah, especially if it really had that international feel and like the heroes would have to choose sides, obviously. I don't know who's jumping into the Punisher's camp, but maybe some villains. Maybe that's fun to have the Punisher with villains, the side that he's sort of always been on. R.I.P. Pete for not being here and me saying that.
There you go. Rogues Gallery #1 from Image Comics, written by Hannah Rose May and Declan Shalvey, art written by Hannah Rose May, art by Justin Mason. I was very pleasantly surprised by this book. I'm going to kind of walk you through the first two parts of it without spoiling too much about what goes on. But the first couple of pages are straight up superhero book, to the point where it's like, all right, what is going on here? I don't necessarily know who these characters are or what's happening, but it's a swerve. It's a feint. We're actually catching up with these characters who are hanging out in a comic book shop, who are fans of a series called Red Rogue, I think is the name of it.
Yes.
And it doesn't necessarily have a comp with anything we know, though the situation that happens over the course of the book is a little similar to what happened with Ruby Rose in Batwoman, which is where I think some of the inspiration came from. But basically, all of those trolls online who are constantly slamming CW Arrowverse shows, what if they decided to get back at the main actor in one of those shows? That's essentially the concept of the book. I really love the swerves it went on as it went forward. I thought it was super fun. What did you think, Justin?
I agree with you. I mean, this is a book that is sort of tense. There's a dread to it. It sort of has a sound a hammer makes when it hits a piece of metal on a cold day, where you're like, I feel like it hurts me in my teeth a little bit reading this. But I love, like you're saying, the way the characters, you sort of see them sort of sink. It's like there's a radicalization thing here, which I think is very topical, and love to see it covered in the comic. At the same time, some sort of like criticizing of the way the media covers, like builds up TV shows or properties or IP or anything like that, and sort of covers it in the same way that is about activating people in that way. So in general, there's just a lot of cool ideas at play here, and I worry for the future of all these characters.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how this plays out and how much it dives into toxic fan culture, he said on his comic book podcast. But I think like it's very pointed in terms of that. And there's some twists and turns that happen, particularly even in like the last panel of the book. But I'm curious how hard it's going to go. And my expectation is very hard, which is very exciting.
Yeah.
So there we go. Next up, this is like a Pete heavy stack. I'm really bummed he's not here. But Young Hellboy, #1 from Dark Horse Comics, written by Mignola and Thomas Sniegoski, art by Craig Rousseau. I just want to jump back to, and then I think we can stop repeating this. A couple of weeks back, you were like, why don't they release more Hellboy books? and I had to, like, this is Young Hellboy, and Dark Horse also sent through another one-shot Hellboy mystery where I was like, we got to make some choices here. There's too much Hellboy happening.
If that was my one wish, I wish it was a little more centered on something I could use. But I agree. Like I said it, and we've had a Hellboy renaissance compared to we've been wandering in the Hellboy desert for years, and these are fun. There's a reason I asked for them.
Yeah, this one in particular, it's exactly what you are expecting from the title. It's a younger version of Hellboy. There's some mysteries going on in the background. You don't really need to know much about the continuity. It's just teen Hellboy with big horns having a little bit of fun and some weird stuff going on in the background. This is a team from Craig Rousseau on art to Mike Mignola and Thomas Sniegoski on writing who know exactly what they're doing. It's very confident and it's very fun.
And this one is more of an ongoing one, it seems like, and I love the way the book ends. And I just love seeing young Hellboy with that giant hand, like it's such an iconic sort of weird image from way back. So it's cool.
Next up, Artemis Wanted, #1 from DC Comics, written by Vita, Ayala, art by Skylar Patridge. So I'll throw this out here at the top here. This is about Artemis, who killed Hippolyta back in the... oh my gosh, what was it called? Not Amazons Unleashed. It was War of the Amazons.
War of the Amazons. Yeah.
Trial of the Amazons. Trial of the Amazons.
Well, I think, wasn't it both?
maybe. But Trial of the Amazons, she killed Hippolyta back then. She was on the run. Diana and Cassie are on her trail, and she is encountering some weird mysteries.
Donna.
There you go. I'm doing great with this book.
I felt your hesitation. I was like, there is something wrong there. And I was like, that's
so
what
here's my issue. I think this is well written. This is well drawn. This should have been like 12 issues of a series.
I felt the same way because I love the premise. I love that we're sort of following Artemis on her sort of Captain America rogue, like disillusioned with everything, running from everything, and still like being a hero. Love that. And then I love the Donna Cassie stuff, like tracking her down, a little conflict there about like, we have to get her and kill her. She owes us. And like Cassie being more like, well, she's a pretty cool hero. I don't know if we want to do that. And it just comes to a head so fast. I was like, I could have done this for so much longer.
Yeah. And I don't know. I assume part of the reason is I don't know how many people would read a 12-issue Artemis Maxi series, but I would have. I think like
100% of this podcast would.
Absolutely. And I think part of that is particularly the pages that are so sparse with just Artemis on the run, the way that Skylar Patridge draws them is so clean. It reminded me, it's a very different subject, but it reminded me a little bit of Bruno Redondo's art on Nightwing, the way that he's been doing that stuff, where it's just like these really clean panels, really just like sparse and silent, her running through the woods, trying to get away through stuff. Would have eaten that up, would have loved that. But instead, every couple of pages here, because it's speeding through the plot so quickly, it's just like 2 solid pages of dialogue where they're like, okay, we got to move on to the next thing. So I don't know. I wonder if this was a whole outline for a series that got jabbed into one Maxi special. Still worth checking out, I think, because I liked it, but I wanted more.
Yeah, I think that's a good call because you can feel it pace up about halfway through where I'm like, oh, this is where it's starting to, because the first half is really setting up a great sort of procedural, and then it gets crazy.
Yeah. Next up, Defenders Beyond, #1 from Marvel, written by Al Ewing, art by Javier Rodríguez. So if you didn't read the first Defenders series, it was a wild, weird trip where the classic Defenders, plus a couple of people, took a trip way back through time for the Marvel Universe, met Galactus's mom and grandma and things like that. It was absolutely bonkers insane. This one is setting up a new team of people who shouldn't necessarily be together, like the Blue Marvel and America Chavez and a variant of Loki, among other folks. And Tigra is in there as well, setting them on a new adventure. First of all, love Al Ewing's writing when he's like unfettered. Javier Rodríguez, I said this on the live show podcast, but I'll read anything he draws.
Say it again. Yeah.
I kind of want to talk about the end, though. Can I talk about the end of the book?
I think so.
Okay, so the end of the book, they reveal the mystery villain who is challenging eternity and all of the cosmos, and it is none other than the Beyonder. And I got to that, and I was like, Marvel keeps doing this to me. They keep getting me with this thing where I'm like, oh, Defenders Beyond, that sounds cool. And at the end is Beyonder. Or there was that mini-series, I think it was Brian Michael Bendis did, called Beyond. And I was like, oh, sounds interesting. What's that about? And then he was like, the Beyonder. And I was like, you got me. Every single time.
Why you keep getting fooled?
I don't know why this is my Lucy football thing, but it's totally like, they keep getting me. They keep fooling me.
You're going to love reading Batman the Killing Joke. Who's the villain? Oh, I don't know. Why don't you check it out?
Well, what did you think about this book?
I think it's great. I mean, Al Ewing always brings like, it's just such a weirder's the wrong word, but like more like deeper details and like more interesting takes on sort of how to set up an adventure for these people to go on. I love the tarot stuff that's in here. And the mix of characters is fun. Like Blue Marvel has always been a character I'm like, I don't quite know how this character sort of fits in with everyone. And I love Blue Marvel in this issue as sort of the like he's so like just hates Doctor Strange in this in a way where he's like, yeah, it is annoying. Blue Marvel's trying to keep everything together and this bubblehead's bothering him. And Tigra's one of my favorite characters. Love seeing her pop up.
Next up, Prophet #1 from Image Comics by Rob Liefeld. Now, I have to apologize because I didn't write down.
Are you about to vomit? You look like you're about to. Is that your
No, actually, I kind of like this, and I didn't expect to like this, to be perfectly honest with you. But this is bothering you because you love Prophet, right?
I love, you mean Money, like lowercase p Prophet?
Yeah, Prophet, the old series with the guy who lived in a box.
I did watch that, and that was a good show. Canceled too soon. That was on Fox, I think, for one hot season. I love the Prophet series that came after Rob Liefeld and after all of that, all that sort of pouch gripping stuff that's happening here. And when it got like all about space, very trippy, sort of about existence and clone and the nature of like being any sort of like being, that was very cool. And this feels, I wanted them to incorporate just a little bit of it.
Well, so the way that I understand this project, and I could be wrong about this, but this is the original issue of Prophet that Rob Liefeld wrote, did the layouts for, and then got a ton of other artists to do individual pages and redraw them. So you got folks like Clay Mann and others tackling this. And for that, I thought this was really cool. I had fun reading this just as an art jam, just as a tribute to for Image Comics anniversary. This is 100% not my type of comic at all, but I kind of had a blast reading this issue.
I did like the art jam of it is cool, but I just the whole time I was wishing I was reading Brandon Graham's take on Prophet.
Oh, all right, fair enough. Next up, The Lonesome Hunters, #2 from Dark Horse Comics by Tyler Crook. If you didn't pick up the first issue of this book, first of all, do that. But second of all, it's following an old man who has a magic sword and doesn't want to use said magic sword, who's gotten sucked into a weird, very Hellboy-esque mystery where there's a crow, raven, I guess, who's sitting on a dude's head, and he's got to get that raven off that dude's head to help out his new young friend. Man, I love this book, and I love Tyler Crook's art. What'd you think about it?
Agree completely. It's very rare, I feel like, for a book to just really grab me like the first issue of this did, and the second issue just follows up. These characters are super unique. The art is awesome. Like, it reminds me of sort of like, it's not similar in necessarily in the art style, but it reminds me of like Hellboy, like has this sort of dark side, a hero who is like reluctant to do the job, and some interesting characters sort of fleshing out the rest of the team. I love this.
It's a little bit like 3/4 of the way between Hellboy and the Goon, I'd say.
Oh, great call. That's on the art style specifically, yes.
Yeah, but so good. Definitely pick that up. Next up, Duo #3 from DC Comics, written by Greg Pak, art by Khoi Pham. This is about a couple who was developing some nanotechnology. One of them died and her consciousness was sucked into the other person's body. This issue, we're finding out some big revelations about what has been going on with them, the enemy that has been targeting them and why, and also they figure out some new powers they can do with their body. Really love this book. We talked about this before, and I know I said this before, but I'll say it again. I know it's part of the Milestone universe, but it feels like a Lost Valiant book to me in the absolute best way.
And I think that especially the art style contributes to that as well. This reminds me of, what was the Valiant book was everything was very gloopy? You know what I'm talking about? It was like it was something.
Gloop?
It wasn't like
Gloop. Shadow Man, Exo Battle War. Archer
Gwyneth Paltrow's Goop. Gwyneth Paltrow's Goop monthly. No, this is very cool, and we should ring up our man Greg Pak and get him on the show, because I would like to talk about this book. I think it's so hard to bring new characters into the world, and I feel like the characters here in Duo are really thought out, really fleshed out. The relationships are great, the powers are great, and sort of the conflict between both our main characters and sort of them and everyone else is really cool.
One thing that I think this book is doing really well is having a married couple who, mind you, one of them is dead and their consciousness is in the other person's body, but having a married couple who clearly loves each other but is still having friction anyway. You know, I feel like often comic books and all soap opera and TV, they're always like, oh, we're having troubles. Well, that's it. We're breaking up, you know, and here they can't break up. So how do they deal with that? How do they get beyond that? How do they work through their issues? It's really interesting and really complex. Next up, Alien Annual #1 from Marvel, written by Phillip Kennedy Johnson, art by Salvador Larroca. This is a one-shot where, once again, Weyland-Yutani messing around with that alien, creating some big problems here and now.
They just don't know when to take a break. Go back to selling shampoo and stuff.
Yeah, that's how it started. That's what they did.
Yeah, shampoo company that ended up becoming a multinational alien courting corporation.
Fair enough.
Don't
Now,
hold it. That was very loosely researched.
We were just talking about annuals on the live show and how worth it they are or not, given this is an annual that we're talking about here. What do you think about it in relation to that discussion?
I really liked it because it was a one-off story. I mean, it doesn't cross over like we were talking about in the live show, obviously, but the way that Marvel's been handling the Alien comics and Philip Kennedy Johnson writing most, if not all of them, like he puts all the elements on the table and mashes them up in a different way every time, where it's still super stressful. It's still like, oh, here they go making the mistake. Maybe don't trust that that synthezoid human, because they seem to betray people all the time. And the Salvador Larroca's art is awesome. It feels like new and fresh every time.
Great stuff. Really good book. Definitely check this out. Like we've been saying, if you haven't been checking out the regular Alien series, you can jump in and check this out anyway. It's a classic, good, fun Alien story. Next up, Bloodstained Teeth, number 4 from Image Comics, written by Christian Ward, art by Patrick Reynolds. In this issue, we meet Dracula, the OG, as our main character is going after yet another vampire that he's created. What'd you think about this one?
I like the series. Like, I think I like the premise so much, and while it is sometimes hard to know exactly what's going on in this book, I think it can be a little bit like, when it gets a little wobbly on that, when it gets back to the premise of just like a vampire that has to hunt down all of the people he turned or else he gets killed, like that's just pure fun. And I love the way they're sort of experimenting with different genre here each issue.
Well, and this issue is kind of like a Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas issue, as our main vampire goes after a guy who's got some drugs in his blood. And that creates some problems. That really leans into Patrick Reynolds' art in particular, which is absolutely gorgeous. And then the colors are gorgeous. So, as I always say, it's worth it for the art alone. Next up, Faithless 3, number 6 from Boom Studios, written by Brian Azzarello, art by Maria Lovett. Now, this is a book we've talked about quite a bit here on the podcast, but we put it on the back burner for a while because Pete, and I think I'm quoting here, doesn't like that fucked up sex shit.
Yeah, I think that's a quote. Yeah, I think the reason he's not here is getting that tattooed across his back, sort of Sublime style.
Pretty much. But this is the final issue of the series after 3 volumes, so I thought it was worth talking about, particularly because Pete isn't here, and we both really liked this book when it was going on. So this has been about demons and the devil and the art world and a lot of things going on in a coming apocalypse and promising that. Here we almost get a postscript to the series in this final issue. What did you think about how it wrapped up, Justin?
I think, like you all do always say, it's worth it for the orgy alone, I think, is what you're usually saying. But this is a book where I feel like the storyline was, the story is the story that we're reading here, but it's really about these larger themes that you were laying out of the connection between like sex, the arcane, and art, and sort of like inspiration, what we do in our own time behind closed doors, and what we put out in the world as art. I like those ideas, and it did the thing that I think is hard to do in a lot of comics and just anything in general, is they didn't really show us exactly. They didn't say like, here is the connection between these things. It's very much like, here's the story we're telling, and we're using those themes, and it's up to you to draw them out from this sort of demonic tale that you're seeing play out.
Yeah, like you said, there's no easy answers. I was surprised how it tied up here and where we leave all of our characters, but I kind of loved the last scene in particular. I thought it was so evocative and interesting.
The orgy part.
The orgy part, yes. Well, no, but I like the way that it played out. I don't want to spoil it for anybody who has been reading the book necessarily, but I thought it was really a smart, not subtle, but purposely unsubtle way of ending the book in terms of the main themes and the main characters. And it really flipped this main dynamic between this character who may or may not, but probably is the literal devil, and our main character of Faith in terms of where they end up here, that I thought was really interesting. This is a great book. Maria Lovett's art was great. If you are looking for something that is a very dark, weird adult tale, definitely check it out. Don't check it out in public because you can't read it there. But
hard to read on the plane. But I also thought it was sort of funny. This comic called Faithless wasn't really about religion. with the devil in it sort of wasn't about that at all, and I appreciated that.
Yeah. Next up, the Jurassic League, number 3 from DC Comics, written by Juan Gedeon and Daniel Warren Johnson, art by Rafa Garas. This continues the story of dinosaur versions of the Justice League fighting back in time. Now, I'll tell you what, I liked Rafa Garas' art, but I was very thrown reading this issue because I expected Juan Gedeon's art, and I think, without saying anything too much against Rafa Garas, I think there wasn't enough delineation between the characters and the background that it sometimes became hard to tell exactly what the action is, which is something that Daniel Warren Johnson is over the moon superb at. Juan Gedeon is really good at, and I think Rafa Garas was not able to channel it in exactly the same way, and that was a little bit of a bummer for me.
Yeah, I agree with you in this. In a series that is about sort of banging a bunch of dino toys together, you really need those bangs to hit, and it felt like it was just a little bit harder to sort of visually follow all of it. But I will say there's no other book like this on the stand. So if you like this flavor, come get it.
Yeah, pretty much everything that I just said, but also it's dinosaurs fighting each other, and that's a fun time. Next up, The Silver Coin, number 12 from Image Comics, written by Stephanie Phillips, art by Michael Walsh. In this issue, we're going back to World War II with some Nazi zombies, potentially, maybe. Potentially. Stuff going on here. This is a little bit of a different tale for The Silver Coin, a little bit of a twist on it. I continue to love every issue of it, but what do you think about this one, Justin?
I mean, I think a comparison we could make is a book we're talking about later on in the stack, Ice Cream Man, that every issue, the specifics are different, though there's some comparison in so the color tone and art, but and equally horrifying, but always a different path. And I like there's so much variety here. I feel like there's always a tendency to be like, all right, we're a couple issues in. Let's start to make sense of this coin. We have to meet the coin maker. Or like, where did they get the eye? Is this going to end up in a bubblegum machine, where coins go to die? So I really like the way that it's just continuing on with just a great anthology series revolving around a coin. Because coins we touch every day almost.
There you go. And this is a good one. If you like the movie Dead Snow, which is also about Nazi zombies, I think you'll like this. I feel like that's the direct inspiration here. Why don't we move on to talk about Alice Ever After, number 4 from Boom Studios, written by Dan Panosian, art by Giorgio Spalletta. In this issue, we're continuing our semi-realistic tale of Alice in Wonderland, but set in an insane asylum. This is a very dark book.
Yeah. Apparently being in an insane asylum, really in any time, is sort of a bummer.
Yeah.
And especially one run by someone who is not super nice. This comic has always felt like the people in power are just horribly damaging and abusing the people below them that don't have power, and it is unrelenting in that take. So I need a ray of light here because it doesn't look good for any of these characters.
This issue in particular, I've really liked this book, but the first couple of issues, I felt like it started with Alice in Wonderland and it's veered into terrible insane asylum, and I need to get back like a little bit of that Lewis Carroll. Like right the ship there a little bit. I think we'll get there, but it's still Dan Panosian now is writing. The Giorgio Spalletta's characters are really good, the way that he draws them. So good stuff. Black Adam, number 2 from DC Comics, written by Priest, art by Rafa Sandoval. Black Adam is dying and he needs his descendant to take over for him. This issue, we find out why he's dying, as well as get to see a sense of potentially what's going to come next. I know you were a huge fan of the first issue, Justin. What did you think about the second one? Did it hold up?
Yeah, I really like the writing in this. I like Priest as a writer, and I feel like always brings just a different energy to the character. And the art as well, I like. This reminds me a lot of one of my favorite comics, Starman, about sort of a character who doesn't really want the mantle of superhero, having to take it, and sort of how that character feels about it comes through in that book and in this book. I think just through great writing, great dialogue, great point of view. And it's just great.
Yeah, it's really.
And
good.
I'm not a huge Black Adam fan by any means. Usually, don't really like Black Adam.
I once I got past the thing with the first issue where we talked about this on the podcast, but where I felt like, okay, why are you not doing a tee up for Dwayne The Rock Johnson's Black Adam movie? What is going on here? This is the exact opposite of what you should be doing.
Yeah.
Getting past that in the first issue, now onto the second issue. Really like the story, really like the characters, like the direction they're taking it in. It's very interesting. Rafa Sandoval's art, as always, just great superhero art, just really good stuff here. And there's an overarching mystery that they're laying out in terms of what's going on with Black Adam and why. Really good stuff, like you said.
Yeah.
Next up, Do a Power Bomb #2 from Image Comics by Daniel Warren Johnson. And can I say, holy shit. Oh my God. Even loving the first issue of this book, loving everything that Daniel Warren Johnson has done, this issue blew me out of the water. I don't want to spoil what happens at the end, but how this dude does such an incredible emotional gut punch in every single issue of his books is blowing my mind.
And I would love to interview him and talk about like his process, because like, is he writing gut punch to gut punch? How is he putting his stories together? Because we did interview him once, right?
Yeah. We talked about him, and it was Pete just like talking for half an hour and being like,
fanning out. Yeah.
I love you. But
so we didn't get too much into it. But like, I do like the way and the detail. Like there's this great full page panel in here. I love pro wrestling, and you just feel it in the character, and you feel it almost through to the creator, like pulling that feels so real, even though it's a character with spikes for hair, wearing 80s surfer glasses and a leather jacket. Like this book is so good, and if I want more gut punches, I rarely say that, especially around Pete.
And just to give you all a sense of what the plot is, if you didn't pick up the first issue, and again, please do, one of the best first issues I've read in a very, very long time. And the second issue follows up on it swimmingly. But it is, and this is a spoiler for the first issue, but it is about this pro wrestler who ends up getting seriously injured and dies during a wrestling match. Her daughter ends up trying to take up the mantle of her wrestling. It doesn't exactly work. Her daughter isn't great at it, but she gets up recruited for like basically a Mortal Kombat, but for pro wrestling at the end of the first issue. We follow up on that here. There's more twists. There's more turns. It is so cool. I can't wait to read the rest of the series. I'm so excited.
Yeah, again, can't believe Pete's not here to talk about this book.
Grimm #3 for Boom Studios, written by Stephanie Phillips, art by Flaviano. Now, I believe we missed the second issue here. We like the first issue of it, so my bad. But this is about a Grim Reaper who is going on a big adventure, and lots of things are going horribly wrong in the afterlife. What did you think about this one, Justin?
Death needs a vacay. Death taking a break, and not. Here's the thing, though. When you take a vacation, you got to put the out-of-office email in place, and Death does not do that. So everyone's stressed. Everyone's stressed about what Death is up to, and this comic moves very quickly between its points from premise into sort of real big world building, and I'm trying to think of a comparison. It feels a little bit almost east of West.
Okay, I could see
the
that.
book. I feel like that has a little bit of a vibe here, and just some fun death, hell struggles.
I'm liking this. I'm liking how they're adding to the mythology every issue. I'm very curious to follow it, and Flaviano's art is very good. Next up, Nightwing #94 from DC Comics, written by Tom Taylor, art by Geraldo Borges. We're continuing the story of Nightwing trying to save Bloodhaven, while, of course, Blockbuster is coming straight for him. But there's a bunch of twists and turns that happen here. This book is great. Every issue. Yeah.
Like truly. I mean, we're like comics. We love comics. And we talk about all of these books that we like, but this is sort of the one. This is the one. If you're looking for just good superhero comics happening right now, go back to the beginning of this very run, which is probably, I want to say, 15 to 20 issues back at this point.
Yeah, something like that.
Something in that neighborhood, and start reading it. The Nightwing Barbara relationship is so aspirational. I love it so much, and that's just the tip of the iceberg of what I love about this book.
So good. Absolutely perfect. Next up, After School, #2 from Image Comics, written by Kate Herron and Brianne Redman, art by Layla Lays. This is an anthology series with some horror stories and sci-fi stories and other stories, mostly dealing with young adults. Here we are getting a stork who attacks kids who don't want their babies, so it's very timely in terms of its message.
Yeah.
Like crazy timely. But good, surprisingly, given the subject matter, very fun little horror story, I thought. What'd you think?
Yeah, it was, to have it that, when that was the premise, I was sort of like, oh, this is intense to read right now. But I do like the way that it was told. I like the art and the fact that it did just follow a true horror structure. And the stork was scary.
Yeah. Scary stork.
Not a famously scary bird in the grand scheme of fear birds, but the fact that this is like interesting or genre takes on after school specials is a great anthology series.
Well, and I'll also throw out, I know we've been teasing that we're going to be talking about Ice Cream Man in a second, but between Ice Cream Man, After School, and The Silver Coin, 3 horror anthologies that we're talking about in the stack today, they're all very different. And I love the fact that you can get stuff like that where, like, After School is this very Tales from the Crypt style thing where it's arch and funny a little bit. Silver Coin is, I don't know, maybe a little more like Twilight Zone, like people getting punished. And Ice Cream Man, I mean, I don't know what it is. It's like maybe it's Outer Limits, but I don't even think that's fair. But that you could have all of those different flavors of stuff going on, I think is very cool. And that Image Comics is publishing all of them is very cool.
Yeah, it's great.
Aquaman and the Flash, Void Song, #2 from DC Comics, written by Colin Kelly and Jackson Lanzig, art by Vasco Georgiev. In this book, the Flash and Aquaman are the only 2 people who haven't been taken down by an alien invasion that has turned everybody into silent, frozen screamers. In this issue, they fight back and find out some big revelations about why these aliens are coming to Earth. I know I said some variation on this with the last issue, but I feel like in terms of what I expected this story to be, I think it is punching so far above its weight.
Yeah, I agree with that. Especially, like, how many times have the Flash and Aquaman really hung out? Mm-hmm. Like, and they own that in the book. They're like, we're not really friends. Flash is even like, we weren't friends before, but we're the only people alive right now, so let's just call ourselves friends. So it is like a fun pairing, and I felt like, to your point, it was sort of more of a gimmicky thing or something that was just like a bit tossed off. But the story is actually really interesting, has some depth. There's some twists and turns in this very issue that caught me off guard, and I'm invested in this. I'm definitely picking this up.
Me too. And Vasco Georgiev's art is so nice and so clean. The way that everybody is just sort of hanging there frozen in the sky as they're shouting this silent shout because of the Void Song is very cool. The aliens are very weird. Love the way that's playing out. I didn't write down who did the colors in this issue, but the colors are absolutely gorgeous as well. This is a really good package. And if you haven't been picking this up, definitely check it out. Next
colors
up,
by Rain Barreto.
There you go. Good stuff. Next up, we've been teasing it throughout the stack, but Ice Cream Man, #31 from Image Comics, written by W. Maxwell Prince, art by Martin Morazzo. I know we talk about every issue of this book, and we talk about how every issue is great and every issue is special. This is, like, I got choked up at the end of this issue.
Especially where, like, in this book, a lot of times the horror is like our own flaws or the things we create for ourselves, the problems of existing in the current world. This is literally just growing older and being alive. I was like, get out of my business, brother. Because this is about being a parent. It's about, like, what living a life is. And, man, the true, like, their only dread in here is something that every single person who reads this book is dealing with right now.
And
so good.
There's a perspective shift halfway through the book, which normally I'd hate. Like, I would not like that as a concept, but the way that they play that out, it was the same thing. I was like, oh my God, what are you doing to me right now? Stop it. You're killing me.
Yeah.
Everything in here, so good. Like, it does not deal with, like you're saying, any of the, like, there's no giant cockroaches, there's no horrible monsters or anything like that. One of the things that is phenomenal about this book, though, 31 issues in, is they're able to put in these, I don't know if they're Easter eggs so much as just parts of the world of the book. Like, there are other issues that happen during this issue, which just sort of pass by in the background, or it touches on other things in terms of like the Ice Cream Man multiverse or whatever they're actually telling in terms of the larger story, that are awesome to read as a fan of the book. But yeah, I don't know. They've dealt with this before, but just the way that they deal with aging and losing a parent here killed me.
Gets you.
Killed
100%.
me. So
I mean, the hit rate on this book that's 100% almost. Like, I can't think of an issue or even as part of an issue where I was like, oh, that's a miss for me. Like, it's just so good. Super consistent.
Incredible. Next up, Fables number 153 from DC Comics, written by Bill Willingham, art by Mark Buckingham. This is dealing with a bunch of ongoing storylines, talking about a hit ratio they've been going for, I guess, with a slight decade-long break into 153 issues here. In one land, Bigby Wolf and Snow White are letting their kids go on adventures. Those go kind of terribly wrong. And
messes up.
yeah, a bunch of other things
up.
going on in the background. So as usual with Fables, lots of stuff going on. But man, it is so surprising, but so nice to have this book back.
I hope it's just ongoing. Like, initially it felt like this was maybe like a 12-issue series, right? But this, it's part 3 of 12, this issue. I want this to just keep going because it's really good. It's super consistent from where it left off at 150. And there's the dread of the way Bigby just misphrases something, a classic like fable or fairy tale mistake. And suddenly it's a big problem. And it's great.
Good stuff. Skybound X, number 25 from Image Comics, written by Robert Kirkman, Joshua Williamson, Lorenzo De Felici, and Max Smith. Art by Ryan Ottley, Andre Bresson, Lorenzo De Felici, and Max Smith. This is jumping ahead from, I believe, issue 5 to issue 25, and that is a shout out to something that Image did back in the day, giving you a little glimpse of the future of Image Comics. That's the same thing they're doing here with a Battle Beast story from Ryan Ottley and Roger Kirkman that ties right into a classic issue of Invincible.
Aggressively ties it.
Which is wild. We get a look at Joshua Williamson and Andre Bresson, who did Birthright, one of our favorite books here, their next ongoing book, which is very exciting, and a bunch of other short stories as well. This was a great package. I really enjoyed every story of this book.
It was really well balanced because you get just like the Battle Beast battle story in the front, and I was super psyched to see Joshua Williamson's next book. I'm a huge fan of Birthright, so Dark Ride really hit with me. And then I think it was the Pale City. Is that Chroma, the Pale City. Just a great sci-fi world to drop into. I could see this being like a Apple Plus series or something, just right out of the gate. And then Scurry, Pete would be talking about Scurry. Pete would be interrupting us to talk about Scurry this entire time.
So great stuff. Definitely pick this up. Last but not least, Batman Superman World's Finest, number 5 from DC Comics, written by Mark Waid, art by Dan Mora. This is wrapping up the first arc of this book as our heroes, including the Doom Patrol, fight against a demonic entity that's trying to take over the world. It, more importantly, and part of the reason we're talking about it, leads into Batman versus Robin, a new book that's coming from Mark Waid. But what'd you think about this one? And what'd you think about the wrap up to the first arc?
Love Mark Waid. Knows how to pack an issue with great adventure, interesting details, the plot changing gears all the time, and just great character moments. And I love the setup for the next issue. I love the stakes of the situation and the sort of very continuity friendly way that the narrative resolves itself. Really nice.
Good stuff. If you'd like to support this podcast, patreon.com/comic book club. Also, we do a live show every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. to Crowdcast and YouTube. Come hang out. We would love to chat with you about comic books. Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, or the app of your choice to subscribe and listen, and follow the show at Comic Book Live on Twitter, comicbookclublive.com for this podcast and many more. Until next time, we'll see you at the comic book shop.
Apologies, Pete, but we love comics too.